producer procurement program with 25 preferred bidders announced in the 5th round. Together, they are expected to produce around 2,600 megawatts of wind, solar, photovoltaic electricity. From the renewable energy bid window 4 projects, 1,600 megawatts had been connected to the grid at the end of June this year, and over 400 megawatts is to be connected by the end of the year. So progress is being made in as far as adding more generation capacity, which is going to be a great boost to the incapacity that Eskom is currently going through. While we can anticipate that substantial new generation capacity will come onto the grid in the near future, there are still many challenges that we need to address to secure a stable and reliable supply of energy. And these include the management of Eskom's debt, overcoming the skills deficit within the company, steadily improving municipal revenue collection, further improving Eskom's maintenance capabilities, and addressing procurement challenges and rooting out all forms of corruption and criminality, including some of the incidents that the Eskom management has been reporting, where pylons have been cut and have been disturbing the operation of the grid. There are no easy solutions to all this, whatever anyone may want to say. This is a complex problem. However, we have developed a roadmap towards a revitalized Eskom within a transformed energy industry. We are making significant progress in implementing the roadmap and are determined, Honorable Speaker, to persevere. And we're determined to persevere regardless of the difficulties and obstacles until we have achieved energy security in this country. And the good thing is that we have now ensured that energy generation will not come from one source only. On a monopoly basis, we've now ensured that there will be many other sources of energy generation. I thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, 6 years ago, you said in this House, and I quote, "In 2 years' time, Eskom's problems will be a thing of the past. People won't even remember load shedding," unquote. 6 years later, and the government still cannot keep the lights on. It's now time to allow, surely, South Africans to solve their own energy crisis. Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis has pledged to make Cape Town load shedding free. The Western Cape government is also committed to assisting 6 Western Cape governments, local governments, to become load shedding free. Now, these plans depend entirely on municipalities being able to buy electricity directly from independent power producers or to generate it themselves. So I would ask you today, Mr. President, can you publicly commit that your national government will not obstruct capable local governments from procuring electricity directly from independent power producers and generating it so that we can keep the lights on, keep the factories working, and creating jobs?
The Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if Honorable Leader of the Opposition was listening carefully, he would have heard me say a number of the measures that we have taken and put in place include, underline include, that there should be independent generation of electricity, including by our local government entities. Now, local government entities play a critical role in the electricity system. Many of them distribute and they on-sell to residents. And whilst it took quite a long time to get finally to this decision that municipalities should be allowed to generate or be able to generate as well as to buy from independent power producers, that's exactly where we are now. So Honorable Steenhuisen is trying to force open a door that's already open. This door is already open. We've given clear direction and permission for local government to generate. And in fact, if there's anyone who wants to see municipalities like Cape Town, any other municipality succeed, that's me here. I'd like to see them immediately move on to generate electricity so that we can de-risk this risk that we have of having one entity alone generating the electricity for the entire country. And if you are, and I've seen it many times, and Honorable Steenhuisen, and I often comment to people, and whenever I fly out of Cape Town or Johannesburg to Cape Town, and at night, and you just look at the whole landscape of our nation with lit lights wherever they are lit, and you must be filled with concern that all this is being done by one company, that when that company falters, it basically means that the entire country is at risk. So what we have now done is to say, let us allow local electricity generation. And yes, an ESCOM, which has an overarching presence in the country and owns the grid, will be always on hand to supplement, to support even those local generators. When they fail, they will be able to rely on an ESCOM. So, Honorable Steenhuisen, be assured that the national government is not going to obstruct the capabilities of local government at all. So you can go to sleep peacefully then.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable JCN Mkhwanazi from the Chamber.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My President, in the light of a long standing and complex challenges that ESCOM is now stuck in whose effects include, amongst others, a periodic load shedding and unsustainable high level of debt. My question is, what role can ESCOM play in the large-scale supply of energy amidst the fast-changing energy environment? And secondly, in what ways will these measures allow ESCOM to generate revenues to reduce its soaring debt and to afford its maintenance costs? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. ESCOM still has a very critical role to play in many, many ways. Firstly, to improve itself in terms of management, in terms of improving maintenance, and in terms of just managing the procurement processes that it needs to embark on to ensure that it has all the turbines and all the various other products and services that it has. But at the same time, ESCOM has also decided that they want to get into the renewable space. And that, in my view, has been quite an important and significant decision. So they now need to build capacity to get into the renewable space and be able to compete with all other entities that are now in the renewable space. What we need to see is healthy competition on the generation of energy, when all of them will channel the energy that they generate into the national grid, into the transmission grid, and the distribution can also be managed in differentiated ways. And this is where a number of local government entities have actually demonstrated that they have great capabilities of distributing electricity. So we also see Eskom being able to manage its debt much more effectively to ensure that they collect revenue, and they are embarking on really good initiatives, working together with local government entities around the country, of enabling the local municipalities to also manage their debt properly and to ensure that there is collection. So that level of cooperation that should exist between Eskom as the generator, as well as the transmitter, with municipalities, is exactly what Eskom needs to improve a great deal on. And I have confidence that they will be able to do precisely that. And of course, the other one is to attract people with good skills who will be able to manage the electricity provision to our nation properly. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable N.F. Shivambu through the virtual platform.
No, thank you very much, Speaker. It's quite obvious now that one of the biggest challenges of Eskom is the subjective incapacity of its current leadership, the board, the CEO. The CEO even came to Parliament to say that Eskom is a dead horse. And you seem to be not paying attention to the fact that the people who are leading Eskom now are not capable of rescuing it from the crisis that we are facing. When are we going to see the change of leadership in Eskom, because they're not capable of reviving it? Unless if your purpose is to decapacitate Eskom, to mutilate it so that we can create space for the independent power producers to continue to ridiculously profiteer out of energy generation in South Africa. You had made commitments before that there won't be privatization of Eskom, but effectively what is happening now is the privatization of energy generation for the benefit of few businesses,
Thank
some
you,
of whom
Honorable
are the
Member.
people that are associated with you.
Your time
That is the
is up.
question. What
You haven't
do we
asked
do with the
the
leadership
question.
of Eskom that is
Honorable
incapable,
Member
has demonstrated that it fails dismally?
Honorable Member Shivambu, you are out of order. Your time is up and you haven't asked a question. Thank you very much. The last supplementary. No. Excuse me. I'll be advised here. But Honorable Shivambu finished his minute and went on to -30, right? Without asking his question. Hence my statement that you haven't asked a question.
Chair, point
So,
of order.
Honorable Singh, I will be assisted
Chair.
by the table. Thank you.
Chair, point of order.
No, you're out of order, Speaker.
Chair, point of order.
No, you're out of order, Speaker.
Chair,
Thank you very much.
No, you're out of order, Speaker.
Honorable, you may take a seat. Honorable member.
Point
you-
of order.
You may take a seat. Take a seat. Now, the advice I am receiving here, Mr. President, is that you may respond to the question. The Honorable, the President.
The question, because you're saying the Deputy President ask the question, Speaker.
The Honorable, the President, Honorable Mkalipi,
Point of order.
please don't do that. Thank you very much. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. In relation to the question that Honorable Shibambo raised with regard to the leadership of Eskom, both at management and board level, I'd like to say that this is a matter that we continuously look at. We look at the capability, the effectiveness of the leadership that, yes, resides in Eskom, not only in Eskom, in all our state-owned enterprises. And we evaluate that against a whole number of indicators. Now, Eskom has been one of the most unfortunate entities in that, I would say in the past 15 years, they've almost had a new CEO almost like every 18 months. And Honorable Speaker, we need to examine precisely what the management is trying to do. What do? They work with a whole number of what I would call blue chip companies that help them service the plants that we have. And because the plants are aged, the plants are old, and they tend to break down quite often. And I've said in the past, there is no deliberateness. There is not a single key leader in Eskom who wakes up one morning and says, I am going to break down one of the power stations. These break down because they are aged. And therefore, what we are seeking to do is to balance, to maintain the fleet that we have, keep it properly maintained, and at the same time, build new capability, which we are continuing to build because there is a deficit of some 5,000 or so megawatts. And once we can breach that gap through new build, as they maintain the current fleet, and as we also retire some of the power stations that we have or purpose them, we will then be able to manage our energy properly. As I said in my main input, yes, load shedding for the meantime is going to be a key challenge that our economy faces. But we are resolving the problem, and that includes being able to bring in more skilled people and continuing to evaluate those that we have from the board and from the management as well. So this is something that is top of mind for us on a continuous basis. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N. Singh from the chamber.
Thank you very much.
Honorable
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, thank you for your response. But I think we all have to agree that maintenance over the years at Eskom has been shocking, to say the least. Now, somebody has to be held responsible for that. I mean, we can't just keep complaining about the lack of maintenance over the years. Who is going to be held responsible and what are we going to do? But having said that, Honorable President, it is a well-known fact that the CFO of Eskom at a SCOPA hearing recently said that they owe over 400 billion rand. And they are in serious debt, and if government does not bail them out, there might be no light at the end of the tunnel. And also that putting money into Eskom will just be putting money into a bottomless pit. Has government considered what kind of financial assistance, if any, is going to be provided to Eskom? And given that Eskom is one of the biggest contributors of pollution in our country, and COP26 proved that, where Eskom is really, causing lots of problems in terms of climate change in our country, Honorable President.
The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Eskom is carrying the biggest debt burden of all our state-owned enterprises. And this is debt that has accumulated over a number of years, but also accumulated as we've had overruns of costs and so forth with the new build that we've had. and we are now stuck with this debt. And we all agree that ESCOM is just too big to fail, because a failing ESCOM would be catastrophic for our economy. It will also be catastrophic for the lives of our people all around. So therefore, ESCOM is our collective problem that we've got to solve. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us to sit and not do anything. It doesn't also help us to be on podiums and be accusatory and accusing people all the time. What we should be doing is to find ways of addressing the problem. Now, the most interesting part is that non-government entities have been discussing how best the ESCOM debt can be dealt with. And this is in the form of business, this is in the form of trade unions and community-based organizations who've been coming forward with really meaningful proposals on how best we can deal with the debt. And government, on its part, has been working with ESCOM, working with those entities to try and find a way of dealing with the debt. A number of proposals abound. Proposals include, yes, take on the debt on your sovereign balance sheet. And some of the proposals are, find a way of selling the debt and so forth and so forth. Now, all these proposals are being looked at, and we should be able to find a solution, because ESCOM, as I've said, is just too big to fail. And I'm rather pleased that a number of South Africans are looking at this rather positively and trying to find a solution. And we will come out with a solution. And of course, the good thing is that ESCOM on its own is forward-looking. It's repositioning itself and repurposing itself. Whereas in the past, ESCOM was just stuck as a coal-fired generation company, as well as, yes, a little bit of nuclear. They're now saying we now need to be broader, much broader than that, and find ways of entering the renewable energy space. Now, that is a forward-looking company that we need to support. We need to support, yes, the leadership as well, as they try to solve the many problems that they face. So ESCOM is, yes, the biggest risk our country faces, and we've got to collectively find solutions to address this risk. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question number 14 has been asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema.
Honorable Speaker, climate change is an existential crisis. As a country, we are a signatory to the Paris Agreement to combat climate change, and as such, we have obligations to contribute our fair share to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The same Paris Agreement places an obligation on developed economies that are responsible for some 76% of historical emissions. They have a responsibility which they signed up to, which everybody agreed they have, to provide support to developing economies to adapt to the effects of climate change and transition to lower carbon future. Now, the political declaration announced at COP26 in Glasgow gives effect to some of these obligations, both our own obligations as a country and those of other developing economy countries, as well as the obligations of developed nations, economy nations. In terms of the political declaration, The US, UK, Germany, France, and the EU have offered, underline offered. They've said we want to put this offer on the table in line with our obligations as agreed to at COP26. And they've offered an initial amount of $8.5 billion, which is equivalent to around 133 billion rand, to support South Africa's just transition efforts, a process that we have agreed that we will go through, a transition to lower our own greenhouse emissions. This support will take the form of various financial instruments, ranging from grants to concessional loans at very low interest rates. This funding will be mobilized over the next 3 to 5 years with a view to longer-term engagement. If we finally reach agreement and accept the offer. This is an initial commitment which may increase as discussions progress and further funds are identified. This commitment from international partners does not mean we need to accept the offer as such, or that we need to accept any unfavorable terms, especially if the financing arrangements could impact negatively on the public fiscus of our country. The political declaration is in line with the obligation on the part of developed economies as historical beneficiaries of high carbon emissions to provide support to developing economies to transit to lower carbon futures. The pace and extent of decarbonization in South Africa will be determined by the financial support available, and it will also have to take into account our own country's social and economic challenges. In other words, this is not a blank check. It has to take into account our own situation, challenges, and everything else. We will continue to chart our own developmental path and continue to affirm our right to develop our economy in a sustainable and inclusive manner. A significant proportion of funding is expected to be used for Eskom's just transition plans, which includes the decommissioning, repowering, repurposing of old coal-fired power stations in line with the Integrated Resource Plan of 2019. Funding will also be allocated towards the development of new sectors such as electric vehicles, the implementation of the Green Hydrogen Sector Master Plan. More importantly, the declaration recognizes that a transition to a lower carbon economy must also address the needs of working people in our country, but they must also address the situation and the needs of communities where these power stations reside at the moment. Funding offered through the political declaration will be used for targeted programs of reskilling, upskilling, creating employment, and providing other forms of support to ensure workers, women, youth are the major beneficiaries of our shift to a greener future. Achieving our own nationally determined contribution targets and implementing the IRP 2019 requires significant investment. And this is investment, some of which, yes, will come from our own country, but some of it has to be sourced elsewhere. And if grants, concessional funding can be a great source of funding, in a way that we can craft the terms that are beneficial to us, it's something we should look at. A negotiations team will be established between ourselves and the partner group so that we are able to discuss precisely how this will pan out. And we are going to deploy some of the really good financial brains, both in the public sector and the private sector, so that, and including trade unions, so that we are able to negotiate really good workable agreements if it ever gets there. This process is expected to be finalized over the next 6 months to a year, and then it will be done transparently. We will all get to know exactly what. Thank you.
Apologies, Mr. President. You may take a seat. Thank you. Honorable members, I learned that those who are connected to the virtual platform are cut off. We will sort that out. No, it's not load shedding. We may require just 2 minutes to do that. Honorable members.
It happens.